And this is True Talk on WMNF. And this is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 with Ahmed and Samar. On today's program, we're going to be speaking about the aftermath of the genocide in Gaza. Is it actually over, or is it just taking a different phase of the war and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian population? Will there ever be a state of Palestine, or is this just another effort to change the realities on the ground and what's going on with the peace plan? But really, also we're going to look into, and this is something I wanted to actually have discussion before because of a program that I had seen by The Guardian, where they went and interviewed and talked to Israeli society, people in society. And this was actually some time back during the genocide. And what their feelings are and were, the average Israeli on the streets of what's happening in Gaza at the time. We'll also get your phone calls. This is True Talk on WMNF. We'll be right back.
الو 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 يا عمري وينك الو يا شبابي وينك الو يا الغالي وين الو الو سلم لي عالحبيبه عايش بين ناس غريبه مش عارف وكري وين الو 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 يا عمري وينك الو يا شبابي وينك الو يا الغالي وين الو سلم لي عالحبيبه عايش بين ناس غريبه مش عارف وكري وين الو يا حبيبتي نعرف اللي طالت غيبتي الايام ضحكوا على شيبتي وشيبه ولا تشيبه ما حبوا طيبتي ناس تستنى في خيبتي والارنبه طلعت ذيبتي وشوفنا منهم خيبه الو يا الغاليه شلز شباب على ايطاليا البحر وامواج والعاليه وغرقين وغرقات وحمام وجاليه ذات يميني وشماليه وفكري كان في الماليه الوحش كبر يا الاخوات الو 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 يا عمري وينك الو يا شبابي وينك الو يا الغالي وين الو الو سلم لي عالحبيبه عايش بين ناس غريبه مش عارف وكري وين.
Hello. Welcome back to True Talk on WMNF. If you're listening to us live on 88.5, welcome. Or if you're listening to us online at WMNF.org, or maybe you're catching the podcast on any of your streaming platforms, welcome to True Talk. If you're new to the show, welcome also. Shows, it's been around for a long time, 20 years. Samar and I have been doing this over 20 years, but since October 7th, 2023, we've been focused on the genocide in Gaza, and we're not afraid to call it a genocide. We're actually been calling it a genocide almost from the first few weeks because it was obvious the genocidal intent and what they plan to do. Everyone else that just kept saying, well, we'll have to wait and see. Well, 65,000, 70,000 people killed later. Most people have come to the conclusion, yes, it is a genocide, and that death toll is probably much, much higher, could even be in the hundreds of thousands, according to some statistics. Not to mention that just about everything that stood in Gaza is now destroyed. They decimated, destroyed, bombed, demolished almost every single structure in Gaza. What does that all amount to? What is that? It doesn't take rocket science to figure out what's going on here. They're making it impossible to live there because they want the people off that land. They want the Palestinians. The Israeli government want Palestinians out of Gaza so they can have that land for themselves, and they want to rebuild it. That's not me saying that. They even went on record saying that. Some of their ministers said, well, we've done the demolition part. Now it's Trump's turn to rebuild it. Now, normally, there's this concept, if you break it, you fix it, but not for Israelis. Uh, Over the years, Israel continues to demolish and destroy Palestinian homes and buildings and businesses and hospitals and schools, but they never pay to fix it. It's always somebody else that's paying to fix it. Most of the time, it's countries in the Gulf, other Muslim countries, Arab countries, or the international community. But you know who's not held accountable for it? It is Israel, even though they're doing the bombings. Somebody might say, well, and oftentimes, and you'll hear this because we're going to hear some perspective from Israelis from a report that was done by The Guardian about a month ago in Tel Aviv. So this is right before the ceasefire and some of their perspectives. And this is also, um, based on other reporting that, confirms that basically says that most Israelis don't care about the Palestinians in Gaza or what's happening to them. In fact, according to some polling, which I'll get into, but actually I forgot to welcome my co-host, Samar. And
I'm
I,
glad
I
you
haven't
noticed.
because she's sick, so I didn't want to put a strain on your voice. But Samar, you're there quietly. Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed. I want to just tell you that my mom is listening, tell our listeners that my mom is listening live from Cairo.
Oh, really? Hi,
So,
Mom.
yeah, hi, Mama, kifek. So, actually, people do listen to our show, by the way, Ahmed. Via either my Twitter account or using the app. So I found out that last week my mom was listening to the show, and when you started the show saying "Salaam alaikum," she immediately answered you, and she said "Wa alaikum salam." My brother told me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
she thought you were addressing her or something, or
I
maybe
am addressing her. Of course, it is to her, and she knows me very well. She
yeah,
knows
she.
Ahmed, and for some reason, whenever she sees me, she's smiling. Um, you know,
I think she feels like you are like her son or something.
yeah, well, I've known her long enough, just about as much as
Yeah,
oh,
and she used to come with me to events, and
to
she
the
used to,
station.
and she would be walking and waving from the back, and everybody loved her, and she loved everybody at the station.
We miss her very much.
Julie,
How
yeah, she
old is
was.
your mom now?
Oh gosh, she's 88, maybe
She's
80.
older than the state of Israel.
Yeah, and actually, every time during her birthday, which happens to be June 9th, I always put, I'd say happy birthday to my mother, who is older than the state of Israel and who was pushed out of her town, which is in the north of Gaza. And this is what people need to know, that most the people who live in Gaza now were people who made refugees when the state of Israel was created. So my mom was 6 years old, and they started bombing her hometown of Al Majdal, which still exists today in the north of Gaza, and they ran to Gaza. They ran from the north to Gaza, and they lived at somebody's house because her mom originally from Gaza. And Ahmed, after probably 6 months, when they realized it's impossible to go back, my grandmother had some gold, and she sold it, and they were able to buy a piece of land in Gaza and built like a very, very small house. And later they were able to build another level when my mom at age 18 went to Kuwait to work as a teacher, and she would save all her money and send it back home to Gaza so they can build another level two-story house. So most of people who live in Gaza are from Lid, from Akka, from other towns that are now part of the state of Israel. So they are being made refugees several times over when they go from North Gaza to South Gaza to East to West. But you said something quite interesting, Ahmed, about the genocide. There
Yes.
was a 60-minute interview with Jared Kushner and Witikoff. I'm not sure if you have seen it. It was on Sunday.
Yeah,
And
so it seemed like a very puff piece. They weren't asking too difficult questions.
yeah, and I think one of the reasons Netanyahu stopped the bombing of Gaza, uh, knowing that Hamas didn't violate it, but there was a truck, and the truck that was clearing and destroying some buildings stepped on a mine and blew up, and has nothing to do with Hamas. And the US knew that, and the State Department knew that, and the Pentagon knew that. And they asked him to stop immediately, like very, very, very stark warning, is because that interview was on Sunday. And they were, if you were on Twitter, you would realize that every few minutes, 60 Minutes was promoting that, oh, we're going to be talking to Jared Kushner, we're going to be talking to Witikoff. So during that interview, she said, Leslie Stahl asks, Jared, she says, you've been to Gaza? He said, yeah. And he's, like a few days before the interview. And she said, what did you think? And he said, as if a nuclear bomb went off. So she immediately said, so it's a genocide. And he said, no, no, it's not. She looked at Witikoff. She said, so it's not a genocide. He said, no, it's not a genocide. So how can you have somebody who describes what he saw as a nuclear bomb went off, but it's not a genocide because probably people didn't die or something? I thought that was the most.
Or he doesn't think that these Palestinians are people. They're not equal to the Israelis. Now, they had a completely different message when they went and spoke in front of tens of thousands of crowds. That rally that they had in Tel Aviv right before Trump came there, and where every time they mentioned Trump's name, the crowd goes crazy and claps. But when they mentioned Netanyahu, they booed. And they spoke about how proud they were, especially Jared, how proud he was of the Israeli society, staying resilient and focused on the hostages. And this is the one thing that, you always heard, that people, even the ones that were protesting in Israel, the overwhelming majority of them that were protesting against Netanyahu, and you would think that they're against the war. Yeah, well, they're actually in this report that I wanted to play from The Guardian, which was right before, the ceasefire. He went to that, what they call the square. What did they name that square in Tel Aviv?
I don't know, but Tel
Hero
Aviv,
Square or something like that.
Tel El Hawa is the real Palestinian name that was
Tel
erased.
El Hawa, because
Tel
it
El
was
Hawa.
windy.
Yeah, Tel El Hawa. But he used the word barbarians. Like,
Yeah,
how should I mean, they were during the interview, Ahmed,
barbarians to describe who?
it didn't specifically say Hamas, but he was talking about the Israeli society, and he says you are unlike those barbarians.
Oh, you're unlike those. Well, the barbarians are in Gaza. Now, there was a poll that was in August of 2025 by the Israeli Democracy Institute, which the actual pollsters themselves were sounding the alarm that this was very dangerous. And in that poll, it found that 79%, almost, 8 out of 10 Jewish Israelis surveyed said they were troubled. They were not troubled at all, or not that troubled by the reports of famine and suffering among Palestinians in Gaza. And in contrast, 86% of Arab Israelis express being troubled. So in Israel society, Israel the nation, It's, made up of Jewish people that are not indigenous to the area. Their ancestors came from Europe. Majority of them, like overwhelming majority. There are some that are, but it also includes Arab Israelis who are, the indigenous Palestinians that somehow managed to stay on their land and they were not forced to go out or kicked out because they couldn't kick everybody out during the Nakba. So those people that are there, 86% of them were troubled by what was happening. And then another question was that they found 78% of Jewish Israelis believe that Israel is making substantial efforts to avoid causing suffering. So completely detached from reality. And they also found the most troubling in that is that they found equal number of Jewish Israelis that thought that there are no, quote, innocents in Gaza. Like basically there are no innocent people. These are people that when you don't feel or believe that there are innocent people in Gaza, that means they're all criminals and they deserve what's happening to them. And the pollsters had sounded this alarm. So what I want to do, Samar, is because I also we haven't taken phone calls for quite some time. I do want to, get some perspective and feedback from our listeners. But first, I want to play this report by The Guardian. Some of it, now, they actually, start by going to a beach in Tel Aviv, and this is like because it was still summertime, people were, as if there's no war. They're celebrating, they're at parties, complete contrast. And this beach in Tel Aviv is just about an hour north of Gaza by, driving, just about 60 kilometers north of Gaza. And it's a completely different scene. You wouldn't even know that there's a war that's an hour away. So now they start there, and then he goes to some markets and, interviews some people in Israel. Now, there's some of the responses are actually in Hebrew, but a lot of it is in English. So where it's in Hebrew, we may skip over it because, obviously you won't know what they're saying unless you speak Hebrew, or we'll just kind of say, give you a summary of what they're saying. So this is, let me play this. But by the way, our phone number is 813-239-9663. If you want to call us in about 10 minutes, we'll start taking some phone calls, or you could email us at dj@wmnf.org.
Along the beach in Tel Aviv, and as you can see, there are people out, their families out, enjoying the sea as they should. It's peak summer. But I can't help but think when I'm walking along the coast here that if you follow the coastline exactly 60 kilometers south in that direction, you're going to reach Gaza. And there, rights groups are saying that there's a genocide and a famine taking place, which obviously feels extremely different to what we're seeing around us here in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is known as Israel's liberal capital. Here you can find beaches, bars, and all kinds of activities that make this an enjoyable city for its nearly 500,000 residents. It's like a beach party.
We're in the middle of a war, 2 years, and the beach behind me is full. Resilience is the main thing that represents Israel, that represents Israelis.
I'm here to find out what Israelis think of the war happening next door and the growing international condemnation against it. Coming here to Tel Aviv, everything feels quite normal. You guys are on the beach having fun. Outside, the war in Gaza is being discussed a lot.
זה לא כזה משנה מה אנשים בחוץ יגידו וכמה הם ילכלכו וכמה זה. אנחנו יודעים כאילו בתור עם ובתור צבא כמה אנחנו מאוחדים וכמה אנחנו ביחד. ואני חושב שזה שהוא רואה אותנו משחקים עכשיו בחוף וזה נטו בגלל הצבא ובגלל כאילו כל המאמצים.
Everyone has a relative or a son or a brother or someone who is fighting in Gaza. Everyone was supporting us and say, wow, we're so sorry and everything. And then, after 5 minutes, everyone forgot. And they forgot why we are in Gaza.
Since the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attacks, Israel's killed more than 64,000 Palestinians in Gaza, with the real toll likely much higher. Famine has been declared, and most of the territory lies in ruins, with Israel's military continuing to destroy civilian structures as it pushes deeper into Gaza. And although recent polls have shown that among Israeli Jews, there's little sympathy for Palestinian suffering in Gaza, a small group of people here are trying to sound the alarm.
We're walking south. So, I mean, if you got into a car here, within probably like an hour, you would get to Gaza. In that direction, it's insane to think as Israelis that we can have a peaceful, easy life here in Tel Aviv when people are going through hell.
Sarit Michaeli is from the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem. In July, they joined major rights organizations around the world in determining that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza.
The people of Gaza have been displaced, bombed, and starved, left completely stripped of their humanity and rights.
They called their report Our Genocide. Our Genocide, that's quite a title.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
As an Israeli Jew, I belong to the collective that is perpetrating this genocide. I bear responsibility. It's done in my name, regardless of, there's this claim that some people make, which is like, this is not in my name. Well, it is done in my name. I live in this society. I pay my taxes, and it's both my responsibility and my obligation to speak out to Israelis about what our government and our army is doing in Gaza.
How hard is it for someone to look in the mirror and say or acknowledge that their government is, as you say, committing a genocide?
It's very hard. And yes, of course, it's terrible to acknowledge that your government, the army that many of our relatives and friends and sometimes we serve in as Israelis is doing these horrific things.
I want to get a better sense of how ordinary Israelis feel about these issues. So I'm headed to some of Tel Aviv's most popular areas. So right now we are walking here in the busy Carmel market in Tel Aviv, and as you can see, they're selling all kinds of goods from fruits and vegetables, snacks and chocolates, electronics. Coming here, I'm reminded of similar markets that exist in Gaza that I visited in the past. However, right now, because of Israel's ongoing war and siege of Gaza, none of those markets, from what I understand, are operational. Packed with people. Can we ask you how life is these days?
פגע בנו קשות בכל הענפים, ואין עבודה, אין תיירות, אין כלום. התיירים לא מגיעים.
You're part of a market that is selling, produce, fruits and vegetables, spices and other goods. Right now in Gaza, people don't have access to any of this. Does that, as a human being, does that affect you, knowing that at all?
אני לא יודע להגיד לך, אני לא רוצה להיכנס לדברים האלה. הלו!
Tel Aviv is amazing. I feel now like I'm in vacation. I feel really safe here. On the regular day, you don't feel it, but then you are scrolling on Instagram and you see all of this. I'm very safe.
What do you see on Instagram?
All the hostages. I feel so sad.
There are undeniably civilians who are suffering right now in Gaza, and rights groups are using the words like genocide and famine to describe the situation there. How much does that concern you, that civilians are suffering and dying?
I care about the people. I care about children all over the world. But first of all, we want the hostages back.
You care about children. When you see the picture, are you guys seeing it? Because
50% at least of the pictures are, how do they call this? Gaza wood. You know it? There is a
Gaza wood, like Hollywood.
Yeah.
But Gaza.
Yes.
Because a lot of people around the world are looking at those pictures. In particular,
This is the big problem.
In particular, the pictures of the children who appear to be starving.
All the people.
Do you guys see those pictures, and does it bother you? Please, Tamar, tell me. Do you see those pictures, and does it bother you?
I see those pictures, and I see a lot of pictures that are not real. They are staged. A lot, at least 50%, if I'm not wrong, even 80%. But I can tell you there are a lot of suffering in Gaza, and the suffer is because of Hamas.
Did you put these pictures up?
Not only me, people who died 7 October. You know, soldiers, people who've been in the party. I have a friend who died.
You have a friend who died on 7th of October?
Nova.
He was at Nova.
Yes.
How old are you?
I'm 19.
19. Are you in the military?
I'm joined up 2 more months.
2 more months, then you're going to
Yes,
go.
November.
And you're going to go to fight?
Yes, of course.
You're going
I
to go
have
to...
to. I love to.
You might go fight in Gaza.
I love to.
You would love
I
to?
want.
Yeah.
People think that the children and the men and everyone has, taken part in 7 October. You can't ignore this. No matter what you say, you can't ignore this. No innocence.
Even women and children are not innocent in Gaza.
There is a mothers of terrorists, we support. So there is no innocence.
And the children?
The children gonna be, terrorists. They're gonna be killers.
כמה שמדברים וכמה שמראים, ואנחנו עדיין אשמים, אז בשביל מה להתראיין בכלל?
שנה, הנה מה.
יאללה, נו, בחייך. מראים מה שהם רוצים להראות.
So right now we are approaching the big weekly anti-government demonstration that takes place here in the heart of Tel Aviv. Now in this demo you'll find a lot of expressions against Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, a lot of signs calling on the return of the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza. What you won't find much mention of is the Palestinian victims of Israel's ongoing war in Gaza.
The guilty and you are to blame.
There is obviously a lot of criticism of this war globally and a lot of people protesting this war who might look at this, what you describe as an anti-war demonstration, and wonder why there's little mention of the Palestinian victims of this war in Gaza.
And listen, the European and the Australian are idiots, excuse me, because they don't understand that the Islam is coming to them as well. It's not Israel to blame. It's the Palestinian, their leaders. They never wanted peace and they wanted to come in our place, not next to Israel, instead of Israel.
Would you
This is True Talk on WMNF, where you're listening to a report by The Guardian that actually aired about a month ago before the ceasefire took place. And we're looking at Israeli society and how did they actually allow this genocide to continue for so long in Gaza. And this report by a reporter from The Guardian examined, his name is Matthew Castle, and you can find it on YouTube. He's speaking to average Israelis about what's happening in Gaza. And almost all of them so far everyone so far is just basically justifying it in one way or another. One person saying even the children, they deserve it because they'd grow up to be terrorists later. So we're going to continue listening to that, and then we're going to take some of your phone calls. You can email us at dj@wmnf.org or call us later at 813-239-9663.
Consider yourself an anti-war demonstrator today? No?
No. I'm an anti-government demonstrator in that I don't believe the government is right in almost anything they do. They lost the legitimacy on October 7th.
Are you calling for an end to the war, though? Do you want to see the war end?
Of course I do. I think we all do.
So you are an anti-war demonstrator?
I mean, it depends if you want to be morally righteous or if you want to be effective. And look, as an Israeli leftist, to argue for effectiveness is admittedly tricky.
So is it ineffective?
It won't
to talk about Palestinian victims? Is that what you just said?
I think that's pushing it a little bit. We as Israelis care more about Israelis than non-Israelis. It makes sense. The Palestinians care more about Palestinians than the Palestinians. The Americans care more about Americans. Everyone does. It's normal.
We're looking people who are expressing any kind of solidarity or support for Palestinians, and we can't find them. So we're going to keep looking. Tell me about your shirt.
I mean, it's true. Palestinian lives matter, which is something that I think that most Israelis don't believe. I mean, they might say it, but the way that they behave and the way that they handle themselves in their politics and the way that they speak just does not reflect that kind of truth, I think.
Do you think, though, that given the scale of the war, and especially the images that have been emerging over recent weeks and months of, people starving in Gaza, that there's a growing number of Israelis who are concerned about that?
Listening to the dialogue in Israeli media and talking to people are more worried about what the Western world thinks of Israel than what are the actual implications of Israel's action in Gaza.
Late into the evening, Tel Aviv comes alive with a famously vibrant nightlife. Who are you?
I'm a famous TikToker.
You're a famous TikToker?
Kinda.
What are you doing here in the streets of Tel Aviv tonight?
I interview.
What are you interviewing people about?
Whatever my mind becomes.
How would you describe the vibe in Tel Aviv tonight?
Sexy, cute, funny, stupid.
אני חושב שבכל מקום יש אנשים שממש שונאים את ישראל ושלא אוהבים אותנו, אולי אנטישמים, אולי מכל מיני סיבות. ואני חושב שהצבא שלנו מאוד מוסרי ושהאנשים שלנו הם אנשים טובים.
This is a young man who's saying that people hate Israel because maybe they're anti-Semitic and that Israel has the most moral army.
אנשים זהב, אנשים שבאמת לא יפגעו באף אחד, תמיד יעזרו.
Our people are good people who truly wouldn't hurt anyone and always help. This is what this young man is saying in Tel Aviv in Hebrew.
אבל בסוף, אחרי כל מה שקרה, בשביעי לעשירי, לא שוכחים
But after October 7th, we don't forget.
במקום שלום, הגענו למצב יותר גרוע של מלחמה, וכיום אני לא רואה איך מגיעים לשלום.
But he doesn't see how now there can be any peace, or peace he doesn't think can be achieved.
Are they looking me up? While conducting our interviews, a woman interrupts to warn those we're speaking to and everyone else in the bar to avoid talking to us.
So while the reporter is actually interviewing this guy and getting comments, someone interrupted and said, this guy is pro-Palestinian, he's against Israel, don't talk to him.
What's happening? How are you? Good. What's happening?
חושבת שאולי מעלים את זה נגדנו כזה, או מנסים להוציא אותנו כאילו רע, או שלדעת על מה מדברים, אז תגיד. Maybe.
Feeling people are turning against us, we decide to leave and visit a popular nightclub not far away.
ממש כאילו עכשיו יצאתי מעזה לרענון אחרי איזה סבב שלישי, ועכשיו באתי לתל אביב, קצת עם...
Now he's speaking to a soldier who had gone to Gaza 3 times, and now he's at a nightclub meeting friends and partying.
להיות עם חברים, קצת לראות את העיר, להיות עם אנשים, להכיר אנשים חדשים גם. קצת לרקוד, לנוח, אתה מבין?
You were just in Gaza only a few days ago, and now you're here at a club in Tel Aviv. What's that like for you?
בהתחלה זה ממש כאילו גרם לי להרגיש לא בנוח.
At first, I was very uncomfortable, like suddenly, quieter atmosphere, more serious. Coming back here, taking a breath, take welcome fresh air.
This is all making me feel very uneasy. We're here in the streets of Tel Aviv, coming to clubs where people are dancing, and asking people hard questions about what they feel about, big topics like genocide. If you are following what's happening in Gaza, it is hard to understand how these two worlds can exist so close together. Over 3 days, we spoke with dozens of people across Tel Aviv and found little concern for Palestinians in Gaza. But for B'Tselem, the blame for what's happening there shouldn't be placed solely on Israel.
There are so many excuses that our government is giving us, or that the powers that be give us, to absolve ourselves of responsibility. The fact that the international community enabled this for the last almost 2 years is one of the reasons why vast parts of Gaza look like a wasteland now, why so many human beings have been killed. We have failed as Israelis who are opposed to this to stop it, and I think Israelis will forever have to reckon with what we have done to Palestinians in Gaza.
Samar,
Quite
what's your feedback?
It is something that I have known, unfortunately, for a while. If you follow many accounts on Twitter where people express their lack of empathy to children and to, for instance, Hind, the young Palestinian who was trapped in a car, and they shot her in the car for more than 350 bullets, 5 years old or 6 years old. And people saying, well, okay, if she grew up, she will have a child, maybe, if she gets married, and then this child will become a Hamas member, forgetting, of course, that the whole story is about occupation and injustice. But you know what's interesting, Ahmed? And it's actually mind-boggling, because if you remember, last week, we spoke about $145 million that the State of Israel is planning to use to affect and influence some churches in the Midwest and in California. And the week before, I think I talked to Ellie Clifton about Oracle and how much such companies are, excuse me, trying to control the narrative. But yesterday there was a Reuters and Ipsos, what they call it, استطلاع الرأي. What is it in English? My gosh. Surveys, yeah. Survey of Americans. And it says, in spite of all this, Ahmed, 59% of Americans support the idea of establishing a Palestinian state. 80% of Democrats, 41% of Republicans agree to that. And 60% of Americans say that what Israel did, its retaliation after October 7, was extreme and it was too much, let's put it. So it's amazing how the American public are able to see and able to realize, in spite of all our mainstream media being so pro-Israel, so pro-Israeli narrative, in spite of the attempts to control TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and our airwaves, people still can see that you do not kill 60,000 civilians and call this a war, or call it just war, or call it just retaliation for what happened on October.
But what it took so many tens of thousands of people being killed, so much, I mean, they paid a heavy price to get the attention of the rest of the world. It took a genocide for people to actually, for some people to wake up. Keep in mind, there's a lot of people are still defending this. I think, there was a report that had seen that even the Secretary General of the UN is too afraid to call it a genocide. Politicians are too afraid from different countries to call it a genocide because there are consequences. But despite that, many people are waking up. We received an email while we're playing the show that, maybe we should address. We've addressed this before, but this was sent through a text. And they write, please correct me if I'm wrong with my history. Don't worry, we will. But didn't back in 1947 to 48, Palestine had the opportunity to form a state, but they that's what they wrote, choose instead of chose not to, and instead was joined by other Arab nations and attacked Israel because they wanted to take Israel's land, and make it all of it Palestine. That's a question that was sent, and to answer that question, if you don't mind, Samar, first, that's not really completely accurate. That's not what happened. As far as some context, yeah, in 1947, the new UN body, one of its first moves was a plan or a proposal to partition Palestine. Israel did not exist. They wanted to partition Palestine at the end of the British Mandate. Britain occupied Palestine. They called it the British Mandate. And as they were leaving, they wanted to partition it. This is part of, and all along was part of what's called the Balfour Declaration, to establish a home for Zionist Jewish state in what is called Palestine. So they're already coming to replace those people. But at the time, the Palestinians rejected it because Palestinians made up of something like 70% of the population or more. And this is already after tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Israelis were already, I guess tens of thousands of Israelis had already migrated illegally and resettled there by the British. But despite all of that migration that was taking place and resettlement as a colonial project, at the end of all of that, they managed to only be about 30% of the population and owned less than 7% of the land. The Palestinians owned 90% of that land in 1947. And the Jewish, because there's no Israel, the Jewish migrants owned about 7%. But the UN proposal proposed giving 55% of the land to the Jewish minority. 55% of the land to the Jewish minority, and only 45% to the Palestinian majority, who made up more than 70% of the population and owned 90% of the land. So they want to just simply take people's land and give it to these new migrants, which made up a minority of the population. Imagine if that were to happen in America, people would not stand for that. So the Palestinians rejected it. And, but
let me just
one more thing I just want to add. As soon as that, and I'll give you a chance, and as soon as that happened, Israeli militias or Jewish militias, like terrorist groups, started going from village to village and implementing the plan before Israel was even declared, to change the realities on the ground. And between, I guess, it would have been November of 1947 to April of 1948, before Israel was even declared, over 300,000 people had already been expelled. And so the Nakba was already starting. It wasn't until after Israel declared its independence, or declared themselves a state, did the Arab nations sent soldiers in on May 15th, 1948. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon sent in troops into Palestine, but by then it was too little too late. And eventually, at the end of it all, Israel actually ended up controlling 78% of the land. So because the Arab troops that came in couldn't actually do much. So the Arab states that came in actually retaliated to what the Israeli militias were doing at the time, not the other way around. Go ahead, Samar.
Well, actually, as a Palestinian, it is very simple. I don't have to even spend a minute to talk to such propaganda. But, I live in my house, and it's my house. It has always been my house, and my grandparents' house, and great-great-grandparents' house. And who knows, maybe my great-grandfather was Jewish, and then when the message of Christianity came to my house, he converted to Christianity. And then when the message of Islam came, he converted to Islam and happened to be a Muslim. So, and then some immigrants who were wronged by Europeans, and where Europe didn't want to take them, and the U.S. shut its ports and didn't want to take them as refugees. The Palestinians accepted them, and I allowed them into my house, and then all of a sudden they want to take half of it and half of the coastal areas and give me some and take agricultural land. So of course, the only logical thing for anybody is to say no. Plus, of course, the massacres actually Ahmed started in the 1920s. The early Jewish organizations, bandits that were considered terrorist organizations and were wanted, like the Menahem Begin and Elgon. All this started way before 1948, but this is really a way to distract us from the original case, which is there is an occupation. And when there is an occupation, you have the right to defend yourself and to get rid of the occupation. This is international law. This is Western European law. So as one Jewish lady once told me, you don't like the resistance and the occupation. Very simple, Ahmed. Excuse me for because I'm losing.
But you always hear this argument. Well, they had the chance for peace to have their own country, but they never did. That's not true. And what happened? Since then, they never gave that land back. They won't even give this 45% that was promised. So while Israel was allowed to declare themselves, Palestine was never. Until now, Palestine is not a state that was recognized, especially by Western nations. It wasn't until after this genocide that many of these European nations started recognizing a Palestinian state. But all of that is just kind of lip service. There's no borders. It's kind of wishful thinking. At this point, the entire world recognizes that there should be a Palestinian state. It's just the United States, Israel, and possibly Germany and a couple of other handful of countries that don't recognize Palestinians. And not only that, and especially since the Oslo, there was a peace agreement in the 90s in Oslo, Israel has been trying to erase Palestine and Palestinian identity completely from history, as if it never existed. And you often hear this from even American politicians, including the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Huckabee, who denies that there's such a thing as a Palestinian. He calls them Arabs. That there's no Palestinian, there was never a Palestine. There's no such thing. And you hear this over and over from people like Ted Cruz and others, these so-called evangelical Christians that somehow believe in order to go to heaven, they have to establish a Jewish state. They have to bless Israel, because if you don't bless Israel, America will not be blessed. This kind of perversion of the Christian religion. This is the same Christianity supposedly that persecuted Jewish people throughout history, that put them in ghettos in Europe. All of a sudden, the evangelical form of Christianity in the past century has been, oh no, they were doing it all wrong. You actually have to bless Israel, and you can't be a Christian without blessing the state of Israel and establishing the state of Israel. This is a type of heresy and innovation that was introduced to the Christian theology that never existed before. And a lot of it has to do with, Zionist philanthropists that actually, created introduced new versions of the Bible that introduced these concepts, and bringing pastors over to Israel for these type of brainwashing sessions and paying off a lot of pastors. And right now, with this $150 million that is now approved by the Israeli Knesset of investing and trying to influence Christian Americans in to win their support or recapture their support for Israel. Part of it is that they plan on giving some of that money to pastors in order to get their support. And these pastors are misleading their congregations. Shame on you if you're a Christian pastor in this country and you see your Christian brethren in Palestine getting killed, their churches being bombed, and somehow you find way to blame them instead of holding Israel and Israelis accountable. And if you're new to the show and somehow think that anything that we're saying is against Judaism, absolutely not. We respect Judaism. It's in fact, as a Muslim, we actually have to believe in Judaism. We have to believe in the Torah. But the type of Judaism that was revealed to Moses, not the type of Judaism that's being practiced by these genocidal people in the Israeli government today. And there's a difference between the Israeli government and Judaism and the Jewish people. So those type of questions, oftentimes you need to have that type, response. You need to answer it because they're trying to rewrite history. Somebody else wrote in, Sarah wrote in and said, this is so heartbreaking to listen to. When the last woman calls the West out as idiots, we are the idiots to let Israel be our spoiled child. If you read this, please omit my last name. Okay, yeah, good. Well, next time just start with that because I did say Sarah. I didn't say your last name. And good thing, but if you don't want me to say your last name, just put that in subject line. But fortunately, I didn't say your last name. Thanks, Sarah. Kim O'Connor says it's called Tel Aviv Square. Yeah, I was trying to think of what it was, and she even sent me a link to it on the map. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. It used to be called Rabin Square. Josh, but I can't read his message. Oh, this show is supposed to be about a lot more than just Palestine, but yeah, that's all you talk about. Instead, now your show sounds like a microphone for Hamas. It sounds like you don't like Jews. And it's Jews' fault that Palestine's problem are caused by Israel. My whole life, I'm sick and tired of Hamas and other terrorists using the Palestinians as pawns in their overall mission to get rid of the Jews. I ask that you realize you are now promoting Hamas. If you don't realize that, you should go get off the air. That's what Josh wrote. What do you think, Samar? I mean, I just got done saying we don't have an issue with Jews.
Ahmed, I think Josh doesn't like to be reminded that it is his tax dollars that is killing babies and killing women and destroying Gaza. So he doesn't like that. Maybe he has a conscience and wants to blame the wrong people. But, Hamas didn't exist before in the 1940s, 60s, 70s. And it is known that Israel made sure that Hamas grows very rapidly in Gaza in order to counter the influence of Fatah and the Palestinian Authority and the power of the PLO and Yasser Arafat. But Ahmed, as we speak, interesting development. Smotrich was talking in a conference, and he says if Saudi Arabia is telling us that in return for normalizations, they want a Palestinian state. Well, no, thank you. Go back to riding camels on the sand in the Saudi desert. And this is exactly how it proves that this guy does not belong to Palestine and he has a Western mentality and he did not come originally from Palestine because, you know what? 1/3 of Palestine is a desert. A Naqab desert in the south. So he is making fun of people who ride camels on sand. How on earth would you ride?
He's a racist.
Not only that, it's the stereotypical ignorant way. Like what? You drive a Rolls Royce in the sand? It will sink. It's God's creation. It's like asking to climb Mount Everest in a Land Rover. You can't. Oh my God.
Right. I mean, they are racist, but I'm surprised that we have this kind of racist mentality in some of the emails that we send. They just want to. I mean, he says that you're just a mouthpiece and the microphone for Hamas. I mean, do you even like Hamas, Samar?
I'm not gonna go there, and I will not really answer a racist person like this one who probably just doesn't listen to our show, because we are very critical of our own governments and things. No, I don't want to even bother to answer such a racist email.
And it takes away from, it seems like he's justifying somehow the genocide and tens of thousands of people getting killed. And this is what you often hear there. What about Hamas? What about this?